Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. It is Sunday night. Well, now it's Monday morning. It's after midnight. That's because I started late because of football. I know the Cowboys aren't in it, but that Bengals-Chiefs game was damn good. I kind of wish they would have been flip-flopped. I wish that would have been the 3 o'clock game, and the Eagles Niners would have been the late game, because I could have checked out of that right when this came on, and I wouldn't be an hour behind. But nevertheless, here we are. It's late, it's early, however you're looking at it. We've just watched an episode on HBO. We got some things to talk about without any of them spoilery things. What am I talking about? Well, why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into season 1, episode 3 of The Last of Us, titled Long, Long Time. And it's one of these things, it's like tough sometimes. Like I watch the episode obviously first, and then I go right into the spoiler review because I just want to talk while everything's super fresh in my head, and then I come back and do my non-spoiler. And it's like you got to think about, like, sometimes I'm not always thinking about on the initial record how things go. Like, I know the scoring stuff, I get that right every time. So like, mild spoiler about my life, when you hear those scores, I'm coming up with them as I'm talking and then acting like I've already said them, because you'll see this video first. It's how I work. So this is something that I did talk a little bit about in the spoiler reaction video, but this video comes out first. And Neil Druckmann, because I follow him on Twitter, he kind of alerted me in a way to the fact that Annie Wersching, who voiced Tess, but was also in 24, Bosch, be very familiar with her from those shows if you'd ever watched them. But she's our Tess, passed away today from cancer. Super sad, and I think she leaves behind two boys and her husband. I think they have a GoFundMe. Link is down below if you want to participate in that in any way. Just figure, like, to put that stuff out there in case it's something that hits you. But a really sad, kind of downer way to come into Sunday night, specifically for this series. Losing one of your OG members, that's a tough one. But I tell you, if I was a betting man, I would bet that Annie Wersching was looking down and smiling her ass off, getting to see the next episode that came up, because this episode was spectacular, and this episode was a surprise. You know what I mean? And anybody that would have been attached to the original game, when this one comes across, you'd be like, well, I didn't see that coming. And that's the thing that I love the most about this episode. Druckmann, he tweeted this out earlier in the week, where he said when Craig Mazin turned the script in, Mazin was writing this one, he said it was one of the best things he had ever read. And I was like, damn, them some high words. And knowing we're going into the Bill and Frank stuff this week, I was expecting some additions, and we get lots of them. But I was not expecting the drastic changes that we get this episode. This is almost a complete departure from the game in some manner. And Druckmann, in the inside of the episode, says, when we were writing, if what we got down on the page was worse or the same, or like in that ballpark, then we go with the game. But if it was better, then we go down that path. And I tell you, man, it's a drastic change. It's more than just additional Bill and Frank storytelling. For people who have played the game, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't watched this episode, you're gonna sit there and be like, there's a moment about probably right around the halfway point when I realized what they were doing, and I was like, oh shit, wow. And it takes a piece of story in the game that's very action heavy, very zombie heavy, and turns it into one of the most emotionally impactful episodes probably of the season. Could be one of the most emotionally impactful TV episodes of the year. And I had a general vibe that might be the route we're going, because I don't think you cast Nick Offerman to play Bill if you're not expecting him to really bring it. And it's one of those, like, the elements of Bill, Offerman can do the asshole stuff. The game doesn't really get too much into Bill's emotions. They kind of dance around the peripheries of those, and that is also something, though, that, like, if you lean into that, Offerman can really do good stuff there. And to get what Mazin turned in, like, it's definitely one of those moments where, yeah, it is a major change, but it's better than what the game did. And the thing about this episode for me is it instills a different kind of hope. It's something that this world doesn't have a ton of. It's something that the first game, for me, has a lot, or has the most of, right? Like, the one thing that's nice about part one, and I mean in part two too, right? Like, the overarching story, there's a lot of hope. It's what keeps you going in this terrible world. But part one, definitely not as dour as part two. It's a little bit more uplifting. It's a little bit lighter. Ellie's a little bit younger. You know, she hasn't hardened the way she is in part two. So, you know, you can have a little bit more fun. But this episode really allows you to give not just us, but your characters a sense of hope that doesn't necessarily exist at this point in the game, that you can see how it's going to push them forward, both as characters and in the stories and places that they're going. So it's kind of nuts, because you end up with a story that's very, very different around the Bill and Frank stuff. The things that have to do with Ellie and Joel in this episode are very, very, very game accurate. And that doesn't mean that there aren't game accurate moments for Bill and Frank. Like, there's lots of game accurate stuff for those characters, and when they pop up, you're like, yes, that was awesome. I can see why they did that. Like, those moments are fun, but a lot of your, like, really true to game moments come in Ellie and Joel's stretches through this point. But it's a really fascinating episode. You're talking about, you know, a character who kind of owns his own town. Like, everybody got taken out, he got left behind, locked himself in, has, like, electricity and water and stuff, so it's a place where things are functional. And how Bill gets there, how Bill maintains it, how Bill comes into contact with Frank, and how all of that plays out, like, it created something that I wasn't expecting, and it hit. And Nick Offerman absolutely crushes it. I mean, I can't state enough how much I like Nick Offerman, just in general. Like, he's so freaking good. But it's one of these things where it's like, when I saw him cast for Bill, I was like, he's gonna be able to do the tough nose Bill stuff. But the little bit of emotion that you get from Bill, Offerman can take that to a different level. And when you get the script that you get here, the Nick Offerman casting makes even more sense. And acting opposite him in this episode for stretches is Murray Bartlett, who takes on the life of Frank. And I love getting to see those pieces of the storytelling that we don't get, that are hinted at in the game. And the two of them play off each other wonderfully. Their relationship, how they interact with each other, how they first meet, how they, how their relationship grows while they're in this town together. Like, it hits a lot of the elements that you would assume come out of the game, but then gives you something that, like, I was just very pleasantly surprised by it, and made me roll a bunch of tears. My buddy Chris is gonna be making fun of me. He doesn't really make fun of me, but no doubt I'm gonna get a text where it's like, of him probably watching the reactions with his son Henry, going, "Oh yeah, man, we got an ugly cry Seaman today." The tears came out for sure, and I love that. And as always, I mean, every week you're gonna get this. Pedro and Bella are fantastic, and the thing that I like this week specifically for Bella is we get a little bit of a more intimate look at some of her rage and not rage, but some of her anger, and how this world has really impacted this little girl. I think to this point she's been trying to be more of a positive. You see some of the attitude and frustration in the first episode with her, but you're kind of now flung into this situation where you have to trust these people, and mainly person that you don't really know. I think, one, she's been kind of thrown around a lot, and she's trying to win Joel over. we really haven't had a chance to see a little bit of the darker side of, not just Ellie, but like of someone who was born into this world, right? Like doesn't know lots of things, because zombies were always here. So to see how that kind of impacts her in a more direct way, really cool add-on, and like adds a layer that I think was there, but it wasn't really hit as hard as you could hit on it. Where like now you're gonna look at Ellie in a slightly different light, and it kind of ties into like the way she watches Joel kill that guard. Like there's the world has done things to Ellie in 14 years, and this episode you kind of really get a direct look at it, and I loved what they did. And then Pedro is he's the man. I love Pedro, and he's crushing this, man. His Joel is so good. Him and Ellie, the way they play off of each other, how he plays off of Bill, and Frank. Like, I just love the things that you got going on for your actors. And like I said, your story here is a lot stronger and better than what we got in the game. So that's super exciting. Score continues to be fantastic. Needle drops. There's a couple, there's at least one song for sure in the game, but where I want to say two, but where some of the music choices come in that aren't score, really, really good stuff there. And overall, I mean, just another fantastic episode. So let's go to Sea Maniacs up. We will talk about our adaptation score first, and while I think this episode is freaking perfect, and even from an adaptation standpoint, like the choice to stray from the direct adaptation and do something completely different to some degree, like really works for me. But when you look at it from an adaptation standpoint, yes, we hit the beats that we need to hit with Ellie and Joel. We hit the beats we need to hit with Bill and Frank. But after you hit those main beats, that like when you get into the nitty gritty of the episode, it's a lot different. So I'm gonna go 4 out of 5 because they adapt a lot of stuff right. But if you're just looking from like straight, how did they do from like adapting and change? This was the biggest steer away. But the steer away is into a lane that's really, really good. And if I'm gonna give the episode a score, I think what we get with Joel and Ellie is a nice piece to keep moving that story forward, and you get some things with them. But this one is really about Bill and Frank, and what you get from Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett is phenomenal. And even though the story is different, I think it's the most impactful episode we've had thus far, and gives you a different view into this world and this experience, and adds a little bit of hope. So I'm going for the first time this season, and it wasn't even because of Joel and Ellie, but freaking Bill and Frank, man. 5 out of 5. This episode was tremendous, man. I mean, I was crying a lot. It just emotionally hit. It captured the characters in a different way, but still correctly. Like, the characters are still dead on, even though there's a little bit of a twist and a change to some of the stuff that's going on. And the storytelling that we get, and specifically the additions around the stuff with Bill and Frank, is just, it's sublime for me. And like, that's the magic of being able to adapt material when you know it as well as the creator of the game, and maybe the game's biggest super fan. At least that's the way Mazin comes off to me. So this episode was really kicking. I can't wait to get up the reactions for you guys. I'm sure you're all dying to see me tear up and see why. Or if you've watched the episode, maybe you know. But anyway, I'm going to shut up so that we can get to that stuff for you guys, and turn it over. I want to know what you're thinking. No spoilers, but if you played the game, did you like the changes? Did this episode hit the way I'm sure Druckmann and Mazin were wanting it to hit, but did it connect for you, or would you have preferred a bit more of an action zombie episode and something closer to what the game is like? And if you haven't played the game, what did this episode do for you, man? Did this give you a little bit of hope in this world? Did you like this story? Did it emotionally connect? Anything you guys got, good, bad, indifferent, on Season 1, Episode 3, long time of The Last of Us? Put it down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the Seaman as we approach next week, or anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer reactions. I got some of those I got to start getting up maybe this week. Oh man, work's been nuts. So hopefully I'm going to get more content up this week than I've gotten the last 2 weeks. You want to be here for that? You want to show a little love of support to this old crazy guy? Well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. That's how you can do that, and you can do it simply by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. Until next time, for the C-Mans, Cinema Sit Down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
Oh, you guys are still here. You snuck up on me. You must be looking for more of this guy. Well, I got 2 video options for you, man. Right up here and right over here. And if you want all those C-Man goodies, well, hey, come join the squad right on over there, and I'll catch you on the next one.